Welcome to the Tokumba Chronicles, a podcast about the journeys we take and the stories we make. In this podcast, I'll be sharing moving stories that are sure to empower, educate, and entertain you. Stories have an incredible way of connecting us to one another, uplifting us, and giving us permission to tell our own story. I will be speaking to entrepreneurs, trailblazers, and dreamers who have incredible and powerful stories to share. From their triumphs and tribulations, we'll be drawing out the details, the how-tos, and the lessons we can take away. Life is what you make it, and only you get to decide how your story is written. I hope by sharing these stories with you, you will live inspired and equipped to live yours out unapologetically. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the chronicles. I am your host and chief storyteller, Tokumba Kweki, a multi-passionate entrepreneur, founder of the award-winning Tokumba's Kitchen and London African Food Week. When I'm not cooking up a storm in the kitchen or regaling guests with my own epic stories, you are most likely to find me in the middle of the dance floor, bringing the party to life. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Tokumba Chronicles podcast. Before I go ahead and introduce today's guest, I do need to issue a trigger warning, as this episode touches on the issues of suicide, mental health, and the loss of young children. There are also some swear language used during our conversation, so you may want to find and put on your hairpiece if there are young children about. Earlier in the year, when I first started recording episodes of this podcast, I reached out to a social media friend who is now more like a sister to me and asked her if she would be happy to share the circumstances of a major and incredibly traumatic loss she had suffered a couple years back. I held off on releasing it earlier in the series as I felt it would be an important issue to discuss as part of Mental Health Awareness Week, which takes place from the 18th to the 24th of May here in the UK. In this episode, Blessing Timidi Digha shares how her lifelong role as an advocate for girls and women started during her childhood, and the impact growing up a girl child living in Nigeria had on her becoming the steadfast feminist she now is. She also discusses the highly traumatic experience of losing her two youngest children to a fire whilst on a work trip. Though Blessing did receive immediate support from her family, her community, and friends from all over the world, her pain and trauma was further compounded by the nature of living in a highly insensitive culture where people, including those who she thought were her friends, imposed blame on her about her loss. The grief and guilt Blessing continued to feel even after she had left Nigeria led her to becoming suicidal. Since her last attempt back in November 2019, she has continued to receive ongoing psychiatric support and therapy to help her deal with this trauma and is now learning to let go of the guilt. I am so incredibly honored that Blessing was happy to share her story with me, not only as part of her recovery, but hopefully to help break down the degree of stigma and myth that is attached to mental health, death, and suicide. If you are at all affected by any of the issues discussed in this conversation, you can contact the Samaritans UK on 116 123. Thank you for listening to the Tokumba Chronicles. Welcome to the Tokumba Chronicles. My guest today is one of those amazing, incredible people that I am so blessed to have connected with because of social media. I can't even remember when we started following each other, Blessing. I think it's been some years now.
It's been years.
It's been years, but I've just been like admiring you and just watching everything that you're doing. You know, you are a feminist, you're an advocate for girls and women. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to today's show, Blessing Timidi Digha.
Thank you very much. The feeling is very mutual, very, very mutual.
Before we go into love affairs, where are you right now in this live recording from?
I'm in Toronto, Canada.
How cold is it out there right now?
Oh my God, it feels like minus 19-ish outside. See, and I dread it because I have to.
I don't understand that. Like, I'm just not.
I have to go out soon.
Every time I think about going to Canada for a visit and then I see the level of snow and cold, I'm just like, nah, I'm good.
Well, the funny thing is, it hasn't snowed in a bit, but it's cold. And the funny, well, they say it's not funny, but Toronto is the least cold right now. Other places are freezing.
Wow.
It's crazy. Yes.
Wow. Okay, well, do you just want to give a little bit of introduction about yourself? You are, like, like I said in the intro, you are such a strong advocate for girls and women. What was the source of your inspiration for your activism in this way?
Funny enough, I've always wanted to be an advocate, but growing up, I didn't have a name for it. But growing up, I've always been that person that will always frown against what I see to be inequalities. So even my mates, my seniors, whenever they feel cheated, they come to talk to me. Right from a very young age, I was the maybe everybody's Voltron, and I don't know, even at home, I grew up with a lot of boys. And
so you have to
in the house,
find your own space.
you get it. In the house I grew up in, I was the youngest, but you won't believe that the guys didn't treat me like the youngest. They told me stuff, all their grievances and all that. So yeah, from time.
So, young Blessing, growing up in a house full of boys, you were the youngest, but you were able to kind of have your own space in that household.
Yeah, and then you know how it is growing up being female in Nigeria. At some point, I had to mix it with some stubbornness to carve my space. Like everybody knew, oh, okay, even though she's the smallest, she's like, they used to call me wild then. I don't know why, but then yeah. So from time, I've always been that person that spoke for everybody. I'm that person that I would always, like, sometimes, like, I remember vividly many times my friends mom, she would send them and their brothers on errands, and if the errands didn't turn out well, she'll want to beat the girls and leave the boys. I'm the person who will say, why, if you sent everybody on errand, why are you beating one group and leaving one group out? So I've always had that, I've always had it in me. Then going to secondary school, I went to a strictly female secondary school, an all-girls school. I was one of those who, yes, with a mix of stubbornness, I was one of those who I never minced words. Like if I felt something wasn't going well, I would say it. There are times when there will be a lot of uprisings in school. Even when I'm not a part of them, I still get punished because the teachers don't believe that somehow I wasn't a part of them. So I've I've always,
You're notorious, basically.
yeah, oh yes, I claim that I was very notorious. But the more I grew up, the more I now realized, okay, there's a whole lot of difference. Boys are given unfair advantage over girls and all that. I was in primary 4, something that really shaped my life. I was in primary 4 and there was a contest for class captain. And then there's this boy in my class. I never forgot his name. It's that bad. Biliamino, very brilliant. And so we contested. I won. He was second with, I think, 2 votes thereabout. But the teacher was going to make him class captain because he's a boy.
Wow.
And I called my family to school the next day. Like, if I'm not going to be class captain, then we don't need class captain in our class. Like we don't mind. We
We're
don't
ready to
mind.
go to war.
Yes, we don't mind. Like the class captain from another class can come be our class captain. But if I will not be class captain, then we're not doing it. So yeah, I've always had it in me. But the more I grew, I, narrowed it down to just focus on girls and women.
Okay. So, young Blessing, what did young Blessing want to be?
Truly, I was not one of those who had for a very long time I didn't know what I wanted to be. But at some point I had this obsession with being a pilot. And then
Really?
yes, I did the training even for 3 weeks. That's how obsessed I was. But everybody kept saying, "Oh, the plane will crash and all that." And so somehow I just lost that love. And then I wanted to be an artist. I do some pretty drawing and
Okay.
painting. So I wanted to be an artist. And everybody was like, "You mean you will go to school and go and study fine art? Who does that?" So
Mhm.
yeah. And then I wanted to do something in line with human rights, but I did not want to be a lawyer
Okay.
because growing up we had this conception that lawyers lie a lot. So I didn't want to be a lawyer. Yeah. But I think the pilot stuff still stuck with me the longest. And yeah, I think that maybe in the future I might still follow that dream.
Why not? Why not? So, would you say that the life that you're living now is one of your own or is one that has been created for you?
Oh, please, the life I'm living now is one that is my own. Like I created this life for myself. I studied engineering in school, basically because you know how Nigerian parents are. You either become a doctor, a lawyer, a banker, or an
Mhm.
engineer. I cannot stand blood to save myself, and I don't think I like to sit down and count too much money at a go. For the lawyer part, that was already out of it. So I was stuck with engineering. And yeah, I studied food science and engineering, but I have never used that certificate for one day. One day, I just, so that they won't say that we did not go to school, that kind of thing. When they are talking, we tell them, "Excuse me, engineer here." But yeah, this is what I've always wanted to do. Um, I love doing it, even when it wasn't paying. Like even when I was just doing it and everybody kept saying, "You're just doing this thing. It's not like you're making money from it and all that." It always gave me joy. Like it always gave me joy. So yeah, this is a life I built for myself.
Amazing. So, for the audience who don't know what your life looks like right now and what it is that you're doing, could you just share with us what exactly you are doing? What is the life that you've created in terms of work, living in Canada? How did you come about to this point of your life now?
Okay, so I work on sexual reproductive health and rights of girls. And I would say, in fairness, that I am in my generation of sexual reproductive health and rights advocates or women rights advocates in general. I have been one of those who have a very fearless voice. One of those who believe that there is no topic that we cannot talk about. So um talked about female genital mutilation, rape, domestic violence, which I experienced, but that's a story for another day. Um, breast ironing, sexual cleansing, you know, anything that has to do with sexual reproductive health and rights of African girls and women,
Hmm.
you'll find me there. And
Indeed.
so coming to Canada here, I am undergoing a program which would help me get into the social space here fully. And then I also work.
Social work
I
space.
yeah, I work at the what's that? I work at the film studios.
Okay.
I belong to a union of theatrical stage employees. I do construction, funny enough. So I guess the engineering
It's
didn't go
coming
to waste.
through.
Yeah. So yeah.
Nothing too sweet. Okay, so tell us about migrating to Canada. I mean, one of the reasons I really wanted to get you on this podcast is because for me, this podcast is really about stories. It's about the everyday people stories. It's about, the life incidences that we prepare for. It's also those unexpected life moments. So growing up in Nigeria, was Canada ever part of your plan? Or was there something that happened that brought you to Canada?
Well, I like traveling generally, and I've always hoped that I'll get to travel to Canada eventually. But in 2018, after I lost my kids, Nigeria just didn't appeal to me anymore. Like, I just wanted to go away from Nigeria, just leave Nigeria. Nigeria just had, I don't know, for all the good memories I had built in Nigeria, I couldn't locate them anymore. I couldn't remember. For me, the only thing that just stayed with me about Nigeria for the longest is, the fact that I lost kids and I buried kids in Nigeria. So I just wanted to leave. And when I was leaving Nigeria, I wasn't leaving because um, I wanted to leave initially just for holiday, let me just leave. And after I lost my kids, myself and my husband, our relationship was, my ex-husband, our relationship was shaky, more shaky. And so um, a lot of friends kept suggesting, why don't you guys take a break, grieve, and then maybe after a year, if you feel you're okay, you can come back together, or, So I went to the US, and then from being in the US, I couldn't work because I had a visitor's visa.
Mm.
To claim asylum in the US is another ball game. In fact, all the options for trying to situate myself in the US were not appealing to me. So I just took the bold step and came into Canada. And so, yeah, here I am, trying to build from where I am, not from scratch, where I am here in Canada.
You talked about losing your children, and obviously I know the personal story behind that. And first of all, I just feel so honored and blessed that you accepted my invitation to come on the Tokumba Chronicles specifically to talk about not just the amazing work that you're doing as an advocate for women and girls, but really to talk about, losing, your children, young children, and also, mental health. So would you just mind sharing the story behind your children's death and how that happened? And obviously, you remember with me, this is a safe space. And obviously, if it's too much and if it ever gets to the point where you no longer want to talk about it, I am here to tell you, let's move on and let's talk about other things. So,
Yeah, it's a very emotional topic to talk about. I still haven't gotten to that space where I can talk about it without crying. So I'm not apologizing.
Cry.
I'm not apologizing, but I'm just putting it out there that I hope that in trying to share this phase of my life, I don't get to traumatize someone else. And I am sorry if that happens. On the 23rd of June, 2018, I was in Abeokuta. I had traveled on Thursday, 21st.
Is in the southwest region of Nigeria.
Yeah, it's in Ogun State, southwest Nigeria. I had traveled on Thursday, 21st, and for a program, and I was to return on Sunday, which is 24th. I truly cannot say much, because I wasn't home.
Mm.
But I can tell you categorically that I was restless that Saturday. I woke up in the morning, I was restless. I kept calling home. And at a point, I remember one of my friends saying, Blessing, what is it? Leave these children to, rest. And even my kids kept saying, but you're coming home tomorrow. But I just couldn't place it. I was restless. And flashing back, when it was night, we had a dinner with Obasanjo. So a former president, his library hosted the event. So I don't know. I had dressed up. I felt strange, and then I went back to the room. I changed into wearing black. But I didn't pick this up as signs, I just know that my tummy, my stomach was not settled, you understand? So at some point, I remember speaking with my parents at 6 o'clock, thereabout. And then my dad was like, when am I going back? I'm like, oh, I'm going back home tomorrow. And he said, okay, no problem. I'll call the kids too. And then I also sent him a number. I told him, oh, their phone at home, they complained that it didn't have a charge on it. So if you cannot reach them, you can call this number. It's a neighbor's number. She can give them the phone.
Okay.
And that was it. But around 8, I remember the time specifically, 8:03 p.m., my dad called me. And then my dad was like, Shoshimalole Lola, which is, you're still going home tomorrow, right? And I'm like, yeah, I just told you this like 2 hours ago. Then he's like, okay, make sure you get home early because something happened. And I'm like, what happened? And then I could hear my mom in the background say, don't tell her, don't tell her. She has high blood pressure. Don't tell her. And then my dad was like, you know what, don't worry. We'll talk about it. Then he ended the call. And I called my mom. My mom kept rejecting the call, Then I called my dad. My dad was like, oh, don't worry about it. Somebody died, but don't worry about it. The moment my dad said somebody died, I was like, who? Is it somebody I know? Because also my husband was supposed to, I was what they call a weekend spouse. So my husband works away from home, but he comes home weekends. So I was worried, I'm like, is it my husband? Please tell me. Is it my kids? I was just trying to place, because I have suffered high blood pressure this is the 7th year now. So my family members are usually careful about the type of news they tell me. So I just kept wondering that, okay, for my dad to tell me, it has to be, someone pretty close. And I called my mom and I'm like, is it my husband? At that point, I wasn't even thinking it was my kids. And I'm like, please tell me, is it my husband? And then I was trying to, I was telling my mom that I won't find it funny if I hear it from outsiders when I could have heard it from you. Then my mom was like, no, it's okay. Then she said, we will meet in Akure tomorrow. That's when I knew something was wrong, but I was restless and then the hall was packed. So I just realized that I started receiving strange calls. Like this person will call me and say, Mommy, it's to know. When I say yes, the person will end the call. You understand? One of my neighbors who sells fairly used clothes, she called me and she was crying in the background. And so I came out of I just tried to make a way, come out of the reception we were having. Then someone else called me. I don't know who that person is till date, but the person said, and I will interpret, the person said, Shekoton, Ene Abuja, Ola US. She better travel nisi amoyin ti ku. And the person, what that means is, I don't know. How will I say Shekoton? Are you content now? Like you're always traveling to today Lagos, tomorrow US. Now your kids are dead. And the person ended the call. And
Wow.
at that moment, I don't know. I screamed, you know. But I think that as I was walking out of the reception, people noticed how I walked out, you know. So some people followed me out of the reception. And then I don't know, the moment I screamed, they said I blacked out. So they were trying to get water and all that. And then one of my friends was with a bottle of Coke. You know, out of confusion, she just poured the Coke on me. And I came back to be. And so my phone just kept ringing. And then my dad called and I picked it. Then I'm like, who died? Which of my children died? Then my dad was like, what are you saying? I'm like, somebody has already called me. So please just tell me. Then he was like, oh yeah, there was a fire in your house, but they've taken your kids to the hospital. I told him, I said, I know one of my kids is dead. And I know the one that died. I'm like, I know my 4-year-old is dead. If somebody has died, it's my 4-year-old. Then he's like, no, why are you saying this? I'm like, I have this connection with my 4-year-old. When something is wrong with her, I know. And so I know that my 4-year-old is dead. Then my dad was like, no, don't say that. But I could hear that my dad was crying, but trying not to cry. So he was like, who is there with you? Who can I speak with? And then I gave the phone to someone. And even though she was trying to be strong, you know, I could see the expression on her face. Her expression changed. And I knew that, okay. But they just kept saying, oh, your kids are fine. Your kids are fine. And I said, okay, I want to speak with my husband. And then I called my husband. And he kept saying, oh, it's okay. It's okay. The kids are in the hospital. I'm like, I know that at least one of them is dead. That feeling. I pretty cannot remember much, but I remember getting to Akure the next day, and my whole area was filled with people. It's like everybody was waiting for me to come. And I remember saying, are all these people here because of me? And then I was like, I have lived in this area for 5 years. I have had 2 children. This type of crowd has never come out for me. And even as I was there, I could hear people, people would talk. I could hear all sorts of comments. Some were really sympathetic. Some were like, why is she crying? Maybe she's always traveling, all that stuff. And my church really played a very big role. Like my church, it was as if after mass, the whole church just came down. And so the catechist took me to her house. Initially, they were like, oh, don't get into that house. Don't go into the house. I'm like, that's the house I used to stay. I need to go into the house. And then I went into the house and everywhere was just a mess. And then I kept seeing my children's shoes all over the place. And I started picking, I started picking their shoes. And I remember that the people my friends and colleagues who came with me from Abeokuta, they just kept trying to, when people were trying to say, oh, don't let her go inside and all that, they were really like, just allow her do what she wants to do if it will help her come to terms. And I really appreciate that because I don't know. And so yeah, um, my church family came, took me to my catechist's place. They were all just hovering around. Somebody kept checking my blood pressure because at that point they just, tried getting me to sleep. I didn't mention that at Abeokuta, my blood pressure was like 170. It was just, and so they had to give me meds. They had to give me meds to sleep. Even the meds didn't work. It made me drowsy, but it didn't work. I was at the catechist's place when my mom came. And so when my mom came, I said, I would like to see my children's bodies. And they were like, oh, they've been buried. I'm like, it's not possible. They're like, oh, no, they've been buried and all that. Well, okay. I didn't believe them, but when my husband now said it that, oh, they've been buried, I said, okay. And I followed my mom to where she stays. The next few days were a whole lot of activity. Like we had to come back to Akure because I was in my mom's place. My husband eventually had to come meet me there. That's when I found out that the kids hadn't been buried. Then my church family swung into action. They tried to get the body. The police were like, they cannot give them the body. They have to see the parents. So my husband went back to Akure, only for the police to say they were going to arrest him. And so that I had to come, And then my surviving daughter, they asked us all to come. And so I had to go meet my dad had to charter a vehicle. We had to go meet my husband at the police station. Friends kept calling, like I'll mention Nana. Nana was very wonderful. She kept calling everybody she knew. And it took the intervention of the former governor of the state for them not to arrest us. And so I think a few days after, we're able to bury the kids. I couldn't go because, everybody kept saying, oh, you shouldn't know where your kids are buried and all that and all that and all that. Yeah. I eventually went, but I didn't go the day they were buried. So, and then, I became highly suicidal. I started seeing a therapist. But I became I just became, something died in me. I don't know. I think that's the best way to put it. And people rallied around us, and eventually we had to move to Lagos. And yeah, and a friend um a friend had made online on Twitter, Shopware. Her house isn't far from where we were staying. So she used to come check on me. She used to come take me to her house, you know. She just used to like try to help me engage myself. I'd sleep there sometimes. Yeah. And then I traveled back to Akure. I tried to get a police report that wasn't working well. I didn't get one. Then I went to the graveside of my kids. Um, had to get someone to, you know, at least help us cement it because they were just buried and covered. And the person, my church was going to take care of that, but the person who was going to cement it for the church asked for almost 300,000 to cement the graveside. And I'm like, so eventually we paid almost 100,000, got someone else to do that. And even though a friend of mine who, funny enough, was at my house on Wednesday before I traveled on Thursday, he supervised everything. I was still on ground to see what was going on. And then there was call for prayer everywhere. This person would say, "Oh, my pastor said you should come and pray. Oh, my pastor said you should come and pray." At some point, I just got tired. When I just said, you know what? I beg. I not kill person, and I have never wished anybody evil. If God feels He wants to take me to, please. I think that's the summary.
Wow. First of all, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being so open. And even for me, this is the first time I'm hearing the full story. Obviously, I heard about it through mutual friends that we have, and I was so devastated for you because you are always, sliding into my DMs or tweeting at me anytime I tweet about my daughter. You were advocating for my child even though you never met her, even though my child didn't need advocating, but you were always, you were such a champion for, other people's children's. So I think that was why so many people came out for you, because it was just so inconceivable that someone like you would lose, your children. And I'm just so grateful that you are in this space to be able to talk about it. And for a lot of people who may not understand the dynamics of Nigeria and the fact that, whilst you suffered this really horrific loss and you still had people who were being snide in their comments, having to deal with, being almost arrested by the police. I mean, I know Nigeria and I understand it, but I can just imagine somebody who doesn't understand Nigeria just thinking, what other, I mean, that would have meant you weren't even allowed that opportunity to grieve immediately, because you had to then just deal with the other nonsense that comes with living in a country like Nigeria and having to, go to the police but be arrested when you weren't even in the home at the time, and just being blamed for the children's loss. And I guess I just want to know, is this something, at the time, did you allow yourself to also feel that you were to blame? And is that
Oh
something
yeah.
you still feel?
Oh yes. Oh yes. At some point, I kept telling myself, maybe I shouldn't have traveled. At some point, I kept telling myself, èló ló ń fún mi gan ní program tí mo lọ, like, how much did they give me? And I heard all manner of stuff. Gosh. Somebody said, oh, bóyá ń dóko kiri, bóyá ibi tó ti ń dóko ló wà táwọn ọmọ ẹ̀ fi kú. Like, maybe I was having sex at the time my kids died and all that. But people don't understand that it traumatized a lot of people. My neighbor whose kid used to practically be at my house. Funny enough, I hear that the girl was at my house. She had just left maybe 30 minutes before the incident happened. That's her only kid ever. Mm-hmm. She had to pack out of that house, out of the compound. The person who stayed with my kids that weekend, I know she's a very quiet person, and I don't intend to bring publicity her way.
Of course.
She was traumatized because she also blamed herself for leaving the kids that period and all that. So there was talk about how gbogbo school tó lọ. Where I stay is a conk Yoruba setting. Yeah, it's part of the highbrow part of town, but you know, gbogbo school tó lọ. Yeah, gbogbo school tó lọ, àwọn ọmọ ẹ̀ jóná and all that. The funniest one was someone was talking about me. I guess she wanted to send a screenshot to someone. She sent it to me. By the time she realized I hadn't saved it and all that, she deleted it, but I had seen what was written in it, that today US, tomorrow this one. Is she the only advocate? Not sit down in one place. Oto abikoto. Then some other person was saying, don't pray for her. She got what she deserved. All these women that will not sit down in one place and all that. And so for a long time, I blamed myself. I would sit down and I would think, God bless you, you're a bad mother, or you left your kids. Which kind of work is that and all that? But you know, going for therapy and all that helped me remember that I am not a bad mother.
You're not.
I can say it. Many of my colleagues can even testify that if I can, I will bring my husband and my children when I'm coming to work. I have pictures of me heavily pregnant, but I'm still working. I'm still on the field. I have pictures of me with a child on my back, and I'm still working. And generally, Buddy and I, in our own way, we give the best. We give the best. And that was enough. I don't know, maybe that's the consolation I give myself, that at every time my kids came first and I gave my best. So yeah, I used to blame myself. You know, even when people started saying, because I don't know where people got that notion from, that when a woman is cheating, her kids will die. I thought they said it's the husband that dies, but anyway, that's not a problem. And when people started saying it, I sometimes will sit down and actually ask myself, was I cheating with anybody? Did I cheat with anybody that I did not? Maybe you get, maybe I cannot remember.
Like accidentally have sex and forgot about it.
And then I had an emotional affair once. I was feeling my ex-husband is probably going to kill me for this, but yeah, half of the time I felt neglected by him, and I did have an emotional affair once, but that's where it ended. It never got, it never went beyond that.
Anything.
Yeah, the person was he was very good for my ego. He was good for, and at that time I was having a whole lot of body issues, weight issues, self-esteem issues. I was just having, and that person was very good for my ego, but it never exceeded that emotional affair. And so even at that point, and the funny thing, he was at that event at Abeokuta. So I kept asking myself, Abi, something happened that I did not, or was I sleeping? But nothing happened. Nothing happened. And so by the time I was able to, my psychiatrist called it naming the guilt. By the time I was able to name it, I realized that the bulk of the guilt I was feeling were imposed.
Yes.
They were what people were saying. They were, they were what people were saying from their own interpretation of what happened. And so it really helped. It helped to liberate me. Like when it happened, I used to be very ashamed to contribute. Aside the fact that I needed to be off social media, I used to be very scared and afraid to contribute to discussions, before somebody would say, when people are talking, you couldn't take care of children till they die. Do you understand?
Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say? So
I
yeah.
mean, we understand because obviously coming from and having lived in Nigerian culture, Nigerians can be very they can be very unforgiving in their ignorance, and they can be very damaging in how that ignorance is, played and relate onto you, and you are then made to feel guilt about doing valuable work and being a working mother, being made to feel guilty, number one, about being a working mother, being made to feel guilty about a working mother who endured a loss that could have happened to anyone. And I think just again, the fact that mental health, grief, loss, that's not something that's really discussed in Nigerian culture in a very sympathetic way. Nigerians are not even sympathetic anyways. To the average person, Nigerians are not the most sympathetic of people. I feel like as somebody who lived in Nigeria as a child and then moved back to the UK and then moved to Nigeria as an adult, one thing that struck me, and as somebody who came from a psychology background, one thing that struck me when I lived in Nigeria as an adult was the fact that emotional intelligence was lacking. A lot of people were not able to articulate how they were feeling, let alone be in a position to sympathize with how you're feeling. And I felt that, so yes, I can, other people listening to this will be like, wow, this sounds like fiction. But for us and for other Nigerians and maybe other Africans and who live in similar cultures, we can understand how having suffered that loss but still being in that type of environment can just further traumatize you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I lost my kids, everybody just kept saying, just get pregnant, just get pregnant. And I'm like,
That's not the
and
solution.
then, you know, and then some people will say, you should even be grateful. Oh, tí ẹ dúpẹ́ pé wọ́n tètè kú, tó bá jẹ́ pé wọ́n ti dàgbà ńkọ́. Like, you should be grateful that they died now
No,
that they are young. It's not like we're wishing for death, but
it's
what
better
if
to
they
die
died?
young than to die old.
What if they had died when they were older after they've gone to university? And, you know, so many things. Some people will just say some things and I feel
Sorry,
like,
and the interesting thing as well is the Yoruba culture, like, with Yoruba culture generally ties womanhood into your children. That's why
well, I'm not Yoruba. That's the
you live
thing.
in a Yoruba land.
Yes, and my husband is Yoruba. I'm not
Exactly.
Yoruba, so
So, so that's
um
why I'm saying in terms of like some of what people were saying to you, it's tied to that notion. That's why, in Yoruba land, you're referred to as Iya Itunu. You're not the mother of Itunu. You're not referred
yes.
to by your name. Once you have children, your first child is the name that you would forever be referred to for the rest of your life, whether you have that child or not. Even when you're, so much older, even now, my mom, I call my mom Iyalai, as my older sister's name, because that's just such a, your identity is tied to the children that you bear, I guess, is
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it is. But
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, let's tell me a little bit about your children. So you talked about, specifically talking about having that connection with the 4-year-old. Was that Itunu? No, Itunu.
Yes.
Yeah. The 4-year-old, and then you also had the son. What were they
2 year
like?
old.
How old was he?
Itunolua was 4 and Dami was 2 at the time. And I know people always say don't have a best friend, don't make your kids your best friend, something like that. But she was not just my child, she was my friend. And it's strange because this is the first time I'm using was. I always use is. And she could read me. She knew when things were going wrong. She would pray for me. In school, when they ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? My daughter will shout, an advocate.
Just like
And
your
they're,
mommy.
and they're like, what does an advocate do? She'll be like, that's what my mommy does. I, I mean, I don't care what it is, but that's what my mommy does. And I remember one time they called me from her school that she had beaten somebody up, which is not Ituno. Ituno is like me. She doesn't know how to hold a grudge. She cries easily. She's very pure. And I got to the school and I saw my daughter panting. Okay, what happened? Say, I dropped them off and he called their mommy fat. And she beat him because she doesn't call his mommy fat. And I told the proprietress, I don't see a problem here. I mean, if his mother has an issue with it, then we can dig it out mother to mother, but I truly don't see an issue here. And truly, the mother took offense because she felt I should have beaten my child. No, woman, I should have beaten your child for running his mouth. Apparently, that's what you guys. That's what you guys. That's what you guys talk about at home. And even though, yeah, when she came back home, I told her, don't be the first to hit people. Her dad didn't like that. He didn't like that training, but don't be the first to hit people. But if anybody hits you, girl, hit yours back. Ituno understands, like she knows when Even when her dad and I used to have issues, she would know, and she would tell me it's okay, my baby is okay, and all that. And Ituno is intelligent. Ituno gets into your house. She's not looking for Queen Premier to read. She's looking for the biggest book to read. And she's trying to pronounce those words. Very intelligent. Hardworking too. Very hardworking. She's, for her age, there are things you shouldn't do in her presence because she will try to do them. She will try to do them. She will. I used to, so for example, we used to keep the Capri Sun Park where it was accessible. But I realized that this Capri Sun Park is finishing, faster than usual. Capri Sun carton that should at least spend 2 weeks. In a week, what's happening? And I realized that once her brother wants Capri Sun, Voltron Ituno has given him Capri Sun. And so I put it up. And then one day, she told the brother to be checking when I'm coming. And she was attempting to climb the fridge so she can bring down Capri Sun. And then I saw, what are you doing? My brother wants Capri Sun. Mommy, but Leonie brother. That's how I brought the Capri Sun down. You will not put me in trouble. Drink to the feel of your heart. That's the type of person she was. Very pure, very understanding, and very appreciative. You give it to know something. The way she will, oh my God, Ben 10 pencil. I'm like, oh, why are you so pure? And my son liked to run. Oh yeah, she liked to sing. She sings very well. She dances a lot too. My son liked to run. So every time his dad and I will say, we have to register him for running as soon as possible. Like, this guy is going to be raking medals. And then he likes to drum. So all the buckets in the house, he will drum. He'll call it jump. At some point, he couldn't pronounce R, jump. And he would drum, and I would be like, oh my God. And the funny thing is, I had planned that the money I make from that event, I was going to surprise him with a drum set and a microphone for my daughter. In fact, I had already priced it. I had a chat with the person selling it over the phone, and I had promised them a movie date on Sunday, and I had planned that after the movie date we'll just pick it up.
Wow.
And yeah, but they were two pure people. As young as Dami was, you cannot treat his sisters anyhow in his presence. It's automatic. He's not talking to you too. Like, I'm like, okay. And he was also very appreciative. Like, you give him food, he's like, oh my God, mommy, it's so delicious. And I'm always looking at the person down there. I'm like, who taught you that big English, And they were fun. At some point, I even had to be closing the bedroom door and put the catcher, because they'll always go and shower. Any small thing, they've gone to have their bath. Kilo Shele, what is happening? But yeah. I am blessed to have experienced them. And I'm hoping that if I ever decide again, because right now I'm in that space where I don't even want to have anything to do with babies coming out of my body. But I'm hoping that if I ever decide to have kids again, that I can love that child totally. I can, because believe me, I gave all of my love, all. Like, when you talk about the love a mother has for children, I think at that point I had expended it all. So yeah, fun to be with kids. And yeah, thank you for asking. That's like, you're like the first
Glad it
person that
doesn't
has,
even smile to you, just having those memories of them. It's
yeah,
like,
you're like the first person who has asked me.
I'm glad.
Every time I want to talk about them, I'm always told, oh, just let them rest in peace. So yeah, thank you.
I mean, again, one of the reasons why I really wanted to discuss this with you is I am somebody that, I suffered a loss. I lost my dad when I was 6 months old, and that greatly shaped and affected the woman I became, the woman that I am now. And I know that it also shaped the way I think about death. And I think about and talk about death constantly. And also, as somebody who has, worked with people who are grieving, I know that the best thing that you can do for somebody is to let them talk about their loved one, whichever way or however way they want to. So for me, it's important that, that we talk about the children, because they did exist.
Yeah,
That they're gone does not negate the love that you had for them, does not change the what they brought to your life. And just seeing your smile as you talked about, Itunu is just, I can just imagine her, and I can just imagine a mini version of you.
yeah, she is actually like, because they spend a lot of time with my parents. If I have to travel, they go there for the holidays. My mom would sometimes say she would sit down and look at her and be like, how did Blessing give birth to herself? you know? And yeah, it was, if that's how I was as a kid, I was one dope kid, man.
I'm sure you were. I'm sure you were. Um, if I mean, just thinking about, who might be listening to this, if there's anybody out there who maybe, because I know a few months ago was obviously the first year anniversary of that loss, and that really impacted you in a really bad way. How have you been able to, how is that grief still impacting you now? And how are you now in this place where you are able to even talk so openly and so candidly to strangers, to me, about what you've endured, and how do you keep going? I know, therapy plays a big part of that, and I'm so glad that you are, first of all, you're out of Nigeria. I'm so glad, really, really, glad that you're in a place where you're able to access the kind of therapeutic support and the type of intervention that you need. And we'll probably continue to need for quite a while to really kind of go through this loss and just stuff. But yeah, I guess I just want to talk about like grief and how it impacts you. Like I said, for me, my father died when I was a baby, but it's only now 36 years later that that grief is impacting me, and I've
I know, I can
recognized that,
imagine.
so on my dad's anniversary now, I've allowed myself to just I take a day off, and it becomes a self-care day. I find, I go into some kind, like I feel depressed, I'm unable to function. And the first time that happened to me a couple of years ago, I didn't expect it, because I'd lived all my life without knowing this man, and kind of I grieved about him when I was a teenager. I had a lot of anger about that. But I thought I was over it, but obviously grief is like a never-ending
Mm-mm.
circle. There's no expiration date for you to stop grieving the loss.
Well, my grief was, or my grief is too, it's multidimensional. And first was losing kids. And then I remember talking to Dr. Maimuna in Lagos, and she told me, in all of this, I hope that you and your spouse don't lose each other because it makes the pain worse. And then, as with every relationship, we were having relationship issues. But after the death of the kids, everything just became amplified. We would argue, we would go months without speaking, make up, fight. You understand?
Mm.
And so I was also grieving. Um, I was also grieving my relationship, the loss of my relationship. I was grieving leaving Nigeria. I don't know. I don't think people know, but that relocation sometimes feels like a loss.
Yes, yeah.
And I was grieving leaving Nigeria. I kept asking myself, did I do, like, I knew I did well for myself by leaving, but I would ask myself, did I do well? Um, and then the loneliness in this place can hit different if you don't have, and even when you have friends, everybody is working. It's not like, everybody is working. I'm not saying people in Nigeria don't work, but here, outside the country, everybody minds their business.
Yeah.
So even when you have friends, they might not check up on you like that. Doesn't mean they don't like you, doesn't mean that they're not mindful of you, but and then the cold again. If somebody can brave the cold and come meet you, the person really loves you. So there was a whole lot of, the grief was multidimensional for me. And then something died in me, you know. Um, sorry, I'm into a whole lot of spiritual stuff, and I feel like the chakra in my solar plexus, I lost it, and that's the chakra that helps you maintain balance and all that, emotions. I lost it. So I had this big hole inside of me. And I don't talk about it a lot. I had an abortion after my kids died. I was grieving that too. So I was just, everything was just happening at the same time. So yeah, I felt very empty. There are days when I still feel that way, but it's, I have learned how to manage. Now I know that when I start feeling that way, I just get on my bed or I just go for a walk or something. I try not to let it linger, because when it lingers, then there's trouble. I have overdosed a couple of times. The last one, even the doctors didn't believe that I did not die. I took like 30 pills of my antidepressants.
When was that?
That was last year,
When?
November. landed in the hospital.
I remember.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that particular episode was my friends from school dragged me out. They're like, you never go anywhere. So I dressed up. I was so happy, dressed up, went out with them. We had fun. But you see, on my way back, I started feeling guilty. And that how dare you have this type of fun? Like, I just started feeling guilty. And by the time I got back to where I was staying, I couldn't shake it off. So I counted 30 pills. And I take different antidepressants. I take like 10, 12 pills per day. So I counted my antidepressants and my sleeping tablets, 30 in number. And then I took a picture. And I took that picture hoping that I could convince myself that I shouldn't do this, But it was so overwhelming. And so I took it and then I went to bed. But I told a friend that this is what I just did, and I'm happy that you've always been there for me. And my friend raced down, so by the time my friend raced down, I was already sleeping, The 911 came. Actually, when they even called 911, it was the police who responded first. So the police woman kept trying to talk to me. I told her I was fine. I was just drowsy. And so I could hear the paramedics say, don't let her sleep. So I was just awake. Then the paramedics came, took my blood pressure, my vitals. My blood pressure was high, but normally when my blood pressure is high, I have headaches. But I was just feeling drowsy, to sleep. Then they got me to the hospital and all that. By this time, my heart rate was something else. So they quickly connected all the machines and all that. But they said they couldn't treat me. They couldn't treat me till the overdose started manifesting, so they know how to treat me. And so I took the drugs around 4 p.m. By the time I had a bed at the hospital, I just slept off. Like I could, but I was very distant. I could hear the doctors come and say, oh my God, she's sleeping. They will nudge me, I'll wake up, look at them. They'll be like, okay, she's still here, The pills didn't manifest till 12 a.m. I started throwing up and then, okay, they knew what to give me. So they gave me drips. I had drips everywhere. And after a while, I wasn't throwing up. I started going to the washroom more, and then I became better. But it just took something away from me. Like, it took something away from inside of me. And I don't know. I wish I could explain it, but I don't want to spook people. But yeah, it did take something away from me. Like, I can personally literally feel like I have a big hole inside of me, even though it's not visible. Yeah, so yeah, it took something away from me.
Blessing, honestly, thank you. All I can say is thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for your honesty. Thank you for just being open. Thank you for your recovery. Thank you for your strength. In everything that you've endured, you are here sharing your story because you still want your story to help others. And I know that's the reason why you said yes to my request. And I am so grateful. Just to kind of like wrap things up, There's one question that I want to ask you, and I'm gonna ask you in two paths. Do you feel like this missing part of you, this part of you that died when you lost your children, do you feel like this is a part of you that you can ever reclaim or that you can ever rebirth again?
Sincerely, I have thought about it, and I don't know. I truly, that's, I truly don't know. I personally also don't want to force it to, like, I don't want to force to reclaim it, because one of the first massages I had that really helped me was Zen Shiatsu, where they massage pressure points of grief and all that. The masseuse, the lady who did the massage, kept telling me that sometimes people do it over and over again because they want to forget. And so, not like I can forget. I have a CS scar to show for one of my kids, but I don't want to forget. I don't want to force it. I just want the wound to heal on its own. So I truly haven't thought about it. I have just focused on doing other stuff for myself.
Then the second part of the question is, I want to imagine you 4, 5 years from now. What does your life look like?
4, 5 years from now, okay. I'm sure I'll be dating.
Keep you around. Like, we need you, so you around. I need you.
I'm sure I'll be dating someone very wonderful. I haven't decided if I want to date a female or a male next, but
Ooh.
but yeah, I'm sure I'll be dating. I don't know. Maybe I might explore having another child, but right now, I don't know. I have days where I crave having babies, you know. I have days where I crave having a baby and all that, but I don't want to give in to that craving. I need to be very sure that it's not my body's way of trying to cope, you know. I need to be sure that I really, really want a baby. And then, and it's not like childcare is cheap here, so
No, it's not.
so
And there's
yeah.
no mommy and dad nursery of mommy and dad.
You know, and
Weekend.
then but one key thing I am sure of is that social work is my life. I love it to bits. One key thing I am sure of is I will still be in this space. I will still keep talking about the rights of girls and women. In the country where I find myself now, I will talk about the rights of Black girls and women. I will always use my voice as much as I can to amplify the issues that concern us, generally as women, and then with bias to Black girls and women. I will use whatever spaces and platforms that open up to me to open spaces for other Black girls and women. And so if somebody is bringing me to a table, while I'm bringing my folding chair, I'm bringing an akbuti for someone, so that, so that we can get into spaces that we deserve to be at. So yeah, I know that 5 years from now, I will still be in the work. I will still be in the social space. I will still be annoying people, because I know that certain people are usually annoyed when I talk about certain things. I will still annoy people. I will still talk about female genital mutilation. I will still talk about domestic violence. I will still talk about access to safe abortion, because Nigerians, let's stop pretending we have a lot of sex and a lot of people have unsafe abortions. Why not just make it safe? I will still be here. As long as I'm alive, I will still be here talking about these things that mean a lot to me. I will live fully. I will live fully. I will. Because one thing, people always used to say, at any fucking time.
For those that do not understand Yoruba,
Pardon my
die
French.
any fucking time.
Yes, you can just drop dead. Boom.
Oh, okay, wait. So we need to actually tell the story of how that slogan got into the Nigerian consciousness. Like, do you want to tell the story? Do you want to tell the story?
No, please, you tell the story.
Oh my God. So somebody on Twitter said apparently they were walking past a mosque and the imam of the mosque was preaching, and part of his preaching, so obviously this is in Lagos in Nigeria, and the imam is preaching in Yoruba, which is one of the predominant language spoken
languages,
in Lagos. And the imam literally said in Yoruba, "Eyan any fucking time." Which is like, I mean, number one, for the head of a congregation of a mosque to be using that type of language, it was just so. But so now it then became a acronym. So
yes,
LKAFT.
ELKAFT, yes.
Yeah, and you're like, because I remember the first time I saw that tweet, I was laughing, and the first time I saw that acronym being used, and you just reminded me, I've not actually said that in quite a while, but
because
I tell people this all the time. I say, death is the one thing that is constant. It's the one thing that is guaranteed. Nothing else is guaranteed. All the things that we talk about, all the plans that we have, all the visions that we have for our life, it might get derailed. We might have to take a detour, but death, there's no derailing death. There's no, and then, and I think personally, there's something I personally find a bit offensive when people say, "Oh, this person died too young," or "This person died too old," and I'm just like, look, how are we to know that this wasn't the person's right time? How are we to determine that? Thing. But at the same time, I appreciate where people are coming from when they say that, because it can feel like such a huge loss when, especially, when you're drawing, but grief affects people the same. So whether you're losing a child, or you're losing a parent, or you're losing a loved one, or just, celebrities, I know that I've been affected. I mean, myself and my daughter, we were both affected when George Michael died, and we were literally listening to his music a few days before, and I didn't even realize that my daughter loved George Michael the way she did, and when his death was announced. So yeah, grief and death and loss is definitely something that I want us to talk about more, and I want us to talk about it in a way that is empowering. Not just to talk about it and say, there's something that Nigerians like to say whenever you say talk about death, it's like, God forbid, this is not
God forbid.
My response is always like, if it's not in your portion, it is in somebody else's portion. So if it's not in your portion today, your day is still coming.
Somebody's gonna die.
Somebody's gonna die.
Like I remember I read a joke on Twitter recently where some kids were talking about their moms, and then one of the kids said, "Oh, his mom was dead," or something, and one other kid was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Everybody's mom will die." And, but that's true. Everybody will die. And, losing kids changed that, changed my mindset towards death. I've never been scared of death per se, but it changed my mindset towards that. So I don't have best clothes. Like, if I get into the store and I buy a new clothes, if I want, I'm wearing it out of the store. All that time of keeping something, you're hoarding it for when you are, when you are looking more beautiful, no, just live to the fullest. I have learned to meet myself every day where I am. So if I wake up today and I'm feeling like, oh my man, Igboro ti daru, let's go do it. Like, if I feel like I want to go have fun, let me stop speaking Yoruba. I have
I
fun.
actually love it. I
And
love it. I love it. It's
yeah,
part of your story. Thank you, Blessing. You are the living embodiment of your name. You have been a blessing
thank
to
you.
me. You are one of the people that stroke my inflatable ego on a regular basis, and I
You
so
should pay
appreciate.
me. You should pay me.
I don't worry, we'll do that eventually. But no, just thank you for coming on the Talking About Chronicles. Thank you for sharing your
Thank
story.
you for
Thank you
having
for
me.
allowing us to be a part of your story and hopefully be a part of your recovery. If there's one thing that you could share with, if there's one, I don't know, maybe not an advice, but if there's something that you wanted to share, something that you wanted to leave people with based on your experience, what's the one thing that you would want somebody to take away from your story?
Um, for someone who talks a lot, nowadays I'm very short of words, but I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you. I I will still say it. I have not had the words to be able to express myself, but I want to say thank you because I am here today because everybody stood up for me, and I am grateful for everybody who sent us money, for people who prayed for us. People took it upon themselves to organize masses for the kids, services for the kids in their churches around the world. People sent me pictures from US, from Kenya. They organized services for the kids. Thank you. For people who still check up on me, thank you. For the people who, when I say I'm fine, and they're like, are you really, really fine? Or you're just fine, fine. Thank you. For the people who paid for our therapy, thank you. For people who check up on my parents, thank you. I don't have the words. I hope that not too far from now, I will be able to say thank you in a very big way, but I am really grateful. I am really grateful for everybody who has held me, who has prayed for me to smile, who has, in one way or the other, who has just in their own little corner thought of me and sent positive vibes my way. Thank you. And even though death is inevitable, everybody will die. I pray that nobody gets to experience this kind of pain. And we know that it's not true. Some people will still experience this type of pain. I pray for strength and a support system. And I just want everybody to always meet themselves where they are every day. Just show up for yourself where you are every day.
Well, thank you
Namaste.
so much. Thank you for
Thank you.
showing up for me. Thank you for showing up for
Thank you.
us. I love you. I
I love
appreciate
you
you.
too.
You are my sister from afar, and I mean, it's crazy that we've actually never met in person. And again, this is just the power of, finding your tribe through a platform like social media. That's,
Mm-hmm.
for all the faults of social media, I always feel grateful that I have a community. I've been able to
Yeah.
find a tribe of amazing, inspiring men and women, especially women who look like me, especially women who have lived, my story, who have lived my experience as somebody who has a dual identity and somebody who has lived in a patriarchal culture of both Nigeria and England. I am thankful. I am thankful for all the work that you do, for all the amazing advocacy that you have been doing, that you continue to do, in
Thank you.
spite in spite of your loss. You still
Thank
are
you.
daily advocating for those girls and women out there to have a better life. And so, yeah, I'm grateful for you, Blessing. I am so, so grateful.
Thank you.